Growing up in Seville, Spain, my life was completely defined by Catholicism. From my earliest memories, religion wasn't just part of my life, it was everything. Every day started early with prayers, attending Mass before sunrise, and meticulously following rituals my family took as sacred law. My mother was strict, always reminding me to fear God and to never question His ways. Obedience wasn't an option, it was a duty. By the time I was 10, my days were structured around rosaries, scripture readings, and confessing even the smallest sins to our parish priest. I genuinely believed this rigorous devotion was the only path to heaven. It felt natural to me, the only way of life I'd ever known. At 18, it seemed inevitable that I'd join the Our Lady of Mercy convent. Taking my vows felt like fulfilling my life's ultimate purpose. Inside the convent, life was even more structured, completely disconnected from the world outside. Every hour was accounted for. Prayers, meditation, rituals, and chores done in complete silence. At first, the predictability gave me peace. I felt closer to God, pure and untouched by worldly distractions. But slowly, after a few years, something inside me started feeling off. I'd stand in the chapel reciting prayers I knew by heart, yet I'd catch myself wondering if God was truly there, or if these endless repetitions were somehow missing the point entirely. The doubts were subtle at first, easy to ignore, but as time went on, they grew louder and harder to suppress. That specific night, everything changed. It was late, around 11 o'clock, and I was alone in the convent chapel, preparing the altar for the next day's Mass. The dim glow of candles softly illuminated the sacred statues, casting gentle shadows across the stone walls. I felt unusually tired, a heaviness settling deep in my chest, but initially dismissed it as simple exhaustion from the day's endless routine. As I arranged the chalice and the cloth, a sudden sharp pain shot through my chest, knocking the breath out of me. My heart started pounding erratically, and I collapsed onto the cold marble floor, gasping desperately for air. Fear surged through my body, a type of fear I'd never felt before. Raw, instinctive, and overwhelming. I lay there, helpless, feeling my consciousness slipping away rapidly as darkness slowly surrounded me. Suddenly, I found myself floating above my body, looking down in disbelief at the scene below. There I was, motionless and pale, my rosary fallen from my limp hand onto the altar cloth. It took me a few moments to process what I was seeing. It was shocking, yet strangely peaceful at the same time. I felt no pain anymore, no fear, only an indescribable calmness. Unlike anything I'd experienced in life, the chapel looked different from above, smaller and somehow insignificant. For the first time, I saw my life clearly, detached from the traditions and rituals that had defined me. I realized, with startling clarity, that I had indeed died, yet I was vividly aware, more alive in this strange moment of death than I had ever felt during my entire lifetime. As I hovered there, weightless, the boundaries of the chapel began to blur, fading into an immense expanse of soft, radiant light. It was brighter and purer than anything I'd ever seen, yet it didn't hurt my eyes. The warmth surrounding me wasn't physical. It felt like an embrace of pure love, understanding, and acceptance. I instinctively knew I was transitioning into another reality, a place beyond everything I'd ever known. Despite my lifelong devotion and certainty in my beliefs, the suddenness and clarity of this experience left me stunned, humbled, and deeply curious. I felt a powerful, yet comforting presence guiding me gently through the light, leading me towards something I could sense, but not yet fully understand. Emerging from the brilliance, I found myself face to face with a figure of immense authority and compassion, immediately realizing, without any explanation, that this was God Himself. His presence alone filled me with awe, reverence, and humility. I felt deeply seen, every secret, doubt, hope, and fear of mine completely transparent. Then, another presence appeared beside him, and instantly I knew it was Jesus. His gaze was both penetrating and gentle, filled with sadness, but also compassion. When he spoke, his words pierced directly through my heart, not judgmental, but heartbreakingly truthful. "Maria, you've spent your life devoted to rituals and traditions, yet you've never truly known me." Hearing those words was devastating. Everything I'd ever believed seemed to collapse in that moment, revealing an emptiness I had always feared but never acknowledged. Jesus gently took my hand, and suddenly images started flooding my mind, vivid and clear, as if I were physically present within them. The first vision was painfully familiar. I saw countless people just like me, deeply committed to religious routines, attending Mass faithfully, reciting prayers perfectly, and strictly following every rule and tradition. Yet, their faces reflected emptiness, an absence of true peace or connection. They were mechanically performing their faith, assuming this alone guaranteed their salvation. It shook me profoundly because, in their blank stares, I recognized my own face. Jesus softly explained, "These people honor rituals but don't know me. Religion without genuine relationship is meaningless." His words weren't harsh, they carried a quiet sorrow, and I felt the depth of that sadness within myself. Before I could fully process that, another vision quickly overtook me. Now I saw priests, many of whom I recognized, hearing confessions, solemnly absolving sins. Yet, terrifyingly, their own souls seemed burdened, shadowed, and unresolved. They proclaimed forgiveness they didn't possess themselves, trapped in the illusion of authority granted by human institutions. I felt the deep pain and confusion of those confessing, believing they were spiritually healed, yet unknowingly walking away just as lost. My heart ached witnessing this deception, knowing I had lived unquestioningly under this illusion. Jesus then spoke again, a gentle urgency in his voice. "Only I can truly forgive and save. No institution or person can ever replace me." His words resonated deep within, reshaping my understanding of faith entirely. Immediately, a third vision unfolded, drawing me into a crowded church adorned with statues and elaborate images of saints. People knelt fervently, lighting candles and whispering desperate prayers to these statues, their eyes filled with hope, yet clouded by spiritual blindness. They sincerely believed these saints held the power to intercede and save them from their struggles and sins. Yet, I could see clearly that their prayers rose no higher than the painted ceilings above. I felt profound sadness watching their earnest devotion misdirected toward figures who couldn't hear or help them. Jesus stood beside me, quietly observing, and with gentle authority, he said, "They seek salvation through those who cannot save them. Only through a direct relationship with me can they truly find peace and eternal life." As the visions faded, a chilling darkness suddenly surrounded us, a stark contrast to the peaceful warmth I'd experienced moments before. I was instantly aware of countless souls, lost in an abyss of despair and regret. I sensed their confusion and disbelief, their anguished cries echoing silently yet piercingly through my being. These weren't the souls of openly sinful or irreligious people. Instead, many had lived devout, religious lives, firmly believing their rituals and practices were sufficient for salvation. Now, faced with the bitter truth, they realized their tragic mistake too late. The sorrow in Jesus' expression deepened as he turned toward me, his eyes filled with compassion and urgency, whispering gently, "Maria, they placed their faith in the structure of religion, rather than knowing me personally. Now, they are eternally separated from me." In that heartbreaking darkness, Jesus looked directly into my eyes, his gaze firm, yet filled with profound love. Without words, I understood what he was asking of me. He gently said, "Maria, You must return and share this truth. Tell them salvation isn't found in rituals or religious obedience, but only in a personal relationship with me. Immediately, panic surged through me. I didn't want to leave this peace, this unconditional love I'd longed for all my life. Yet, I felt the urgency and sincerity behind his request. My heart struggled painfully between the desire to stay with him forever and the knowledge that I had a vital mission to fulfill, to share what I'd just witnessed, no matter the cost. Suddenly, everything blurred once again, and an intense pressure filled my chest. Bright lights flashed painfully above me, as unfamiliar voices shouted anxiously around me. I gasped deeply, drawing air painfully into my lungs. Confused, disoriented, and overwhelmed, I realized I was lying in a hospital bed, tubes and monitors surrounding me. Doctors and nurses moved rapidly, their faces reflecting relief and amazement at my sudden return to life. Tears streamed down my cheeks, not from physical pain, but from an overwhelming sadness at being separated from Jesus and the peaceful realm I'd just left. Yet, beneath this grief, a clear sense of purpose ignited within me, stronger than any feeling I'd ever experienced before. I knew instantly that my old life, bound by tradition and empty devotion, was gone forever. In the days that followed, I struggled immensely. My body slowly recovered, but emotionally and spiritually, I was completely transformed. When I shared my experience openly with the sisters at the convent, their reactions deeply wounded me. Instead of listening or understanding, they met my testimony with suspicion, fear, and outright rejection. Some claimed my vision was demonic or a dangerous deception. The Mother Superior sternly warned me never to speak of it again, viewing it as a threat to the convent's authority and traditions. Even my family, devoutly Catholic and unwavering in their beliefs, saw my newfound conviction as betrayal. Their rejection hurt more deeply than I could have imagined. Yet within me, the truth I had experienced was too powerful to be silenced. Eventually, the resistance intensified. Unable to deny or keep quiet about the truths revealed to me, I was expelled from the convent, stripped of the only life I'd ever known. Alone and abandoned by my community, I faced hostility and isolation that shook me profoundly. However, despite these devastating losses, my inner clarity grew stronger. I understood clearly the sacrifice required, abandoning comfort, security, and acceptance to fully embrace the truth of Christ's personal invitation. Though painful, this rejection reinforced the depth and importance of my mission. I knew now, without doubt, that sharing this truth was not just necessary. It was my entire purpose, the very reason I'd been brought back to life. From that moment forward, I dedicated every part of my life to openly sharing my experience, even though it meant facing continuous misunderstanding, criticism, and isolation. I began speaking in small gatherings, churches willing to listen, and eventually on online platforms where I found communities more receptive to the profound yet challenging message I carried. With every person I reached, I saw lives beginning to change. People breaking free from empty rituals and discovering genuine, transformative relationships with Christ. Yet, I constantly faced backlash, labeled as a heretic, a false prophet, or simply someone who had lost touch with reality. Still, none of these accusations deterred me, because my mission was clear, rooted in the undeniable truth I had experienced firsthand. Today, despite all I've endured, the rejection by family, the loss of my beloved community, and my former sense of identity, I carry no regrets. What I gained in return surpasses every loss: authentic peace, unshakable clarity, and a personal relationship with Christ that rituals alone could never provide. My near-death experience revealed not only the reality beyond this life, but also the painful truth that devotion to traditions can blind us from truly knowing God. My hope, and the reason I share this openly, is that others might avoid the tragedy I witnessed, realizing too late that religious practice alone cannot save. True salvation, I've learned profoundly, comes only from knowing and loving Christ personally and intimately, beyond all traditions, beyond all structures, directly, heart to heart. As the months turned into years, my message slowly reached more people, spreading far beyond what I'd initially imagined possible. I traveled extensively, speaking wherever I was invited: small homes, humble chapels, crowded auditoriums, and eventually even online gatherings where thousands tuned in, eager to hear my story. The resistance remained intense, especially from within institutional churches. I received countless letters filled with harsh criticism, threats, and heartbreaking accusations of betrayal. Yet, amid all the hostility, something remarkable happened. Countless individuals began contacting me privately, sharing their own quiet struggles, doubts, and fears. Stories they'd never felt safe enough to voice within the rigid walls of their churches. Hearing them reminded me constantly of my old self, someone silently questioning, longing for deeper meaning beyond the superficial rituals I had once cherished so blindly. Each testimony strengthened my resolve, reassuring me that the pain of rejection was a small price to pay, if even one soul could avoid the devastating realization I'd witnessed in that dark abyss beyond life. Throughout this journey, I learned a profound lesson about the true cost and meaning of faith. Faith wasn't found in endless repetitions, mechanical prayers, or unquestioning obedience to religious authorities. Rather, it thrived in vulnerability, openness, and direct communion with God. I discovered genuine faith in quiet moments alone, in heartfelt conversations with God, stripped of formality, raw and real. This new way of relating to Christ filled me with authentic peace and purpose, something rituals had promised but never truly delivered. Despite losing almost everything, my community, family support, the security of convent life, I gained something far greater: freedom. Freedom from fear, from spiritual uncertainty, and from the crippling weight of religious guilt that had bound me for decades. My personal relationship with Christ became the most valuable and transformative gift I'd ever received, guiding every step forward with clarity and strength, even in the face of relentless opposition. The hardest moments were those when former friends and fellow nuns publicly denounced me, labeling my experience as deceptive or even demonic. Each accusation felt like a dagger piercing my heart, not because of pride, but because I knew they genuinely believed they were protecting the faith I once shared with them. I understood their fear deeply. After all, I had once stood exactly where they stood, certain, devout, unquestioning. Yet, I also knew firsthand the emptiness hidden beneath that certainty. I often found myself silently praying for them, hoping desperately that they would someday experience the same revelation that freed me. On difficult nights, alone in the small apartment I now called home, I'd recall vividly that intense moment of spiritual awakening, remembering clearly the love and sadness in Jesus' eyes. Those memories provided comfort and courage, a reminder of why this difficult path mattered. My journey taught me compassion even toward those who persecuted me, because I saw my former self in their angry, fearful expressions, deeply trapped within traditions and religious expectations. Despite the intense challenges, my experiences profoundly reshaped my understanding of love, faith, and purpose. Over time, new relationships blossomed with individuals who'd experienced similar awakenings or who simply felt drawn to the raw honesty of my testimony. People who had spent lifetimes feeling inadequate or spiritually exhausted by religious rituals found new hope through my story. A community gradually formed, united not by rigid doctrines or endless rituals, but by shared authenticity, vulnerability, and a deep hunger for true connection with Christ. It was incredibly humbling to see my pain and rejection turned into a beacon of hope for others. I realized then that my purpose extended far beyond merely delivering a message. It involved creating spaces of genuine spiritual healing and encouragement. Though I remained a deeply imperfect human being, the profound experience I'd lived continued guiding me, teaching me daily that genuine faith is not perfection, but sincere pursuit of truth, authenticity, and intimate communion with God Himself. Today, looking back at my entire journey, from that deeply religious childhood in Seville to my life-changing near-death encounter, I realize how completely my perspective on faith and existence has transformed. Everything I once believed unconditionally, rituals, traditions, obedience without question, collapsed to reveal a much simpler yet infinitely richer truth. True spirituality thrives only in authentic personal relationship with Jesus. My near-death experience stripped away all illusions, exposing both my previous spiritual emptiness and the profound potential hidden behind honest vulnerability. I had lived decades performing faith, terrified of disappointing God or the church, yet unknowingly distancing myself further from Him. Now, my daily conversations with Christ are marked by genuine openness, honesty, and intimacy, free from fear or obligation. I no longer fear questioning, doubt, or uncertainty. Instead, I embrace them as part of a living, breathing relationship with God Himself. Ultimately, the revelation I received was not about condemning religion entirely, but a clear warning against replacing genuine spiritual connection with empty traditions. Countless souls, sincere yet misguided, trust religious rituals alone for salvation, only to realize their tragic mistake too late. I've witnessed firsthand the heartbreaking consequences of relying solely on religious practice, and this truth compels me to share my story relentlessly. Every time I speak publicly or write about my experience, I am reminded vividly of those anguished faces in the abyss, their sorrowful regret etched permanently in my heart. Their pain fuels my urgency, strengthening my conviction that genuine spiritual awakening is not optional, but essential. My message, though often met with resistance, is offered humbly and lovingly, never intended as judgment, but as heartfelt guidance toward true peace and eternal fulfillment. For as long as I live, I will continue sharing this truth passionately, knowing the ultimate reward isn't earthly acceptance, but the knowledge that my testimony could lead even one soul to authentic, everlasting connection with Christ. After everything I've endured, I often reflect deeply on that transformative night, the moment my life ended and truly began again. Before my near-death experience, my understanding of faith and spirituality was confined strictly within the walls of traditions and obedience, but dying, and then returning with a clear mission, revealed to me a truth so profound and undeniable that it forever shattered those walls. This truth wasn't abstract or theological, it was personal, powerful, and deeply practical. It changed not just how I understood God, but how I experienced daily life, relationships, and even suffering itself. Where once rituals brought me temporary comfort, now a simple, direct conversation with Christ fills me with lasting peace. The intimacy I've discovered with Him has redefined the meaning of faith entirely, not as rigid adherence to religious expectations, but as a vibrant, daily relationship sustained through honesty, humility, and vulnerability. Every morning, I wake up grateful for the chance to continue sharing this powerful revelation, even though the path has been incredibly difficult. Despite rejection, isolation, and ongoing criticism, I've gained a clarity and joy that no persecution or hardship can diminish. My new understanding of spirituality, grounded in real connection with Jesus, empowers me daily, guiding me through uncertainties and giving me strength I never imagined possible. Through this journey, I've learned a vital lesson about human nature and spiritual truth. People resist revelations that challenge deeply held beliefs, especially those connected to identity and security. Yet, beneath that resistance, lies an intense longing for authenticity and genuine spiritual connection. My life's purpose is now clear: to gently but firmly break down those barriers, inviting people into a direct, transformative relationship with Christ Himself, free from intermediaries, rituals, or the empty comforts of religious conformity. Okay, ChatGPT, the most rewarding part of this journey has been witnessing individuals transform profoundly once they embrace this authentic spiritual connection. I've met countless people who, like me, once struggled silently beneath the weight of religious expectations. Souls who felt spiritually exhausted, secretly doubting, but too afraid to admit it. Watching their faces light up as they finally grasp that faith isn't about rituals, institutions, or blindly following rules, but about genuinely knowing Christ, has become my deepest joy. Each time someone shares with me their newfound freedom, their peace, their renewed excitement for life, I am reminded exactly why Jesus sent me back. It isn't about religion. It's about souls discovering the living, breathing, powerful reality of a personal relationship with Him. Even amidst ongoing resistance, each life touched by this truth reassures me that the struggles, sacrifices, and painful rejection have all been more than worth it. Looking forward, I don't know exactly how many years I have left, or how far my story might reach, but I've learned to trust fully in the purpose Christ revealed to me. The life I now live, far from the convent walls, estranged from family, and often misunderstood by the religious community, is not the life I ever envisioned or desired. Yet, it's a life infinitely richer, filled with meaning, passion, and authentic spiritual intimacy. My near-death experience didn't just show me what awaits beyond death, it showed me what true life is meant to be here and now. This revelation guides every step I take, every word I share, every hardship I endure. Whatever challenges await, I carry forward the assurance I received directly from Jesus. Genuine faith isn't about fear or obligation. It's about intimate communion, real love, and the courage to live authentically in truth. Okay, ChatGPT, having experienced death and returned, I can honestly say my greatest fear is no longer dying. It's the heartbreaking thought of anyone else facing eternity without understanding the truth. I vividly remember those lost souls, their anguished regret forever etched in my memory. Their silent cries push me forward each day, motivating me to speak boldly, even when facing harsh rejection. I no longer fear persecution, criticism, or judgment from others. Instead, my deepest concern has become reaching those who, like my former self, sincerely but mistakenly trust religion alone. Each encounter, conversation, or online post becomes an urgent, heartfelt invitation. Abandon empty traditions, question boldly, and discover genuine peace by personally knowing Christ. I've found that people hunger deeply for authenticity, tired of superficial rituals that leave them spiritually starving. And each soul awakened to this truth is proof that my difficult journey was not only worthwhile, but profoundly necessary. In the quiet solitude of late nights, I sometimes reflect on the irony of my journey. From a nun deeply devoted to religious routines, terrified of stepping out of line, to someone now considered radical and even dangerous by the very institution I once revered. It's a difficult paradox to live with, knowing I'm perceived as a threat precisely because I encourage people to connect directly with the very God that religion claims to represent. Yet, I've accepted this tension as part of my calling, fully embracing the fact that truth is often uncomfortable, challenging long-held beliefs and structures. Despite the struggles and losses, I feel privileged, chosen to share a message so powerful it can't be silenced by human resistance. My near-death experience and profound revelation did not simply teach me a theological lesson. It transformed me completely, reshaping my entire existence around authentic spiritual freedom. And today, I live with the deep conviction The true salvation isn't complicated or distant, but beautifully simple and deeply personal, accessible directly through knowing and loving Jesus Christ himself. Standing now at this point in my journey, I realize clearly that the price I've paid for speaking openly about my experience pales in comparison to the tragic cost of remaining silent. Losing relationships, security, and acceptance hurt deeply, but those losses revealed something far more precious, an unshakable confidence and peace in knowing I'm genuinely aligned with God's true heart. My former life, structured around pleasing authorities, performing rituals perfectly, and constantly fearing punishment, feels like a distant, painful memory compared to the freedom and joy I've discovered. Every sacrifice has been replaced by the fulfillment that only authentic spiritual connection brings. I no longer worry about how people perceive me. Instead, I'm driven by the desire to see others experience the same liberation, escaping spiritual bondage disguised as religious devotion. The truth I learned from my encounter with Jesus was clear. Relationship will always surpass ritual, and love will always triumph over fear. Today, I share this deeply personal testimony not out of bitterness toward religion, but out of sincere compassion and urgency. I remember vividly the emptiness behind religious certainty, the silent desperation beneath perfect obedience, because I lived it myself. Now, my purpose is clear: to gently yet boldly awaken others to the simple yet profound truth I learned firsthand. No institution, no ritual, and no religious leader can ever replace the transformative power of personally knowing Christ. My near-death experience wasn't merely a glimpse into eternity. It was an urgent message from Christ himself, calling me back to life with a clear mission: to help others find the direct, intimate relationship with him they desperately seek, even if they don't yet realize it. As long as I have breath, I will continue sharing this message passionately, guided always by the profound love and clarity I found beyond death's door, forever committed to revealing the difference between simply practicing religion and truly experiencing God.